the cold and the rain and everything. Thank you very much. I'm Ella from the New Israel Fund. I'm the Community Engagement Manager. And we're very, very pleased to have Ron, Mariam, and Michael with us. They came this weekend to the London Initiative Convention, Congress, Work Retreat. There you go. And we're very lucky to have them here with us today. We're going to hear from them about the situation at the moment in Israel, looking forward to the upcoming elections. And I will pass, shall I give you the mic? Yeah?
Hello, is that working now? I switched it on by myself. I'm very proud of myself for that. Okay, thank you everybody so much for coming this evening, for braving the freezing. Every time the door opens, it's Siberia in here, so thank you. Thank you for coming along. Welcome to this evening organized by the New Israel Fund. My name's Alona Ferber. I'm a journalist at Prospect, the finest magazine in the UK, I would say. Please subscribe. I'm pleased to chair this discussion about democracy, equality, and the Israeli elections with my three esteemed guests. It's an election year in Israel, as you all know, and this is an election which comes amid 2 years of horror, war, and internal disintegration. So we're going to ask today, do Israelis actually support diplomatic solutions to the conflict? Is there any real hope for a shared future? We're going to discuss what Israelis think about democracy, about Israel's onslaught in Gaza, settler violence in the West Bank, and also we're going to talk about Jewish-Arab and Jewish-Palestinian relations. So I am delighted to be joined today by Ron Gerlitz and Miriam Kabaha from ACORD, Social Psychology for Social Change, the pioneering Israeli nonprofit. Yes, is that better? You can't hear me? Is that better? Can you hear me now? Okay, so I'm delighted to be joined by Ron Gerlitz and Mariam Kabaha from ACORD, Social Psychology for Social Change, the pioneering Israeli nonprofit. They will share their research on the Israeli public's mindset. They'll also talk about their work in shared Jewish-Arab spaces. Ron joined ACORD as CEO in October 2019, leading its expansion into new areas, partnerships, and deeper impact. Before that, he spent over a year as co-executive director of Sikoy, a Jewish-Arab organization promoting equality and shared society. Mariam Kabaha is vice CEO of ACORD. She used to serve as Israel's National Commissioner for Equal Employment Opportunities, and she brings deep experience in public service and inclusion to her role. Thank you, Mariam, for being here today. Last but not least, we're joined by Michael Manekin, who won the NIF UK Human Rights Award a few years ago. He is the director of the Alliance Fellowship Program, an Arab-Jewish political network in Israel supported by NIF. He previously led Breaking the Silent, the think tank Molad, and he is a founder of the Faithful Left movement promoting equality through Jewish tradition. Thank you all so much for joining us today. We'll have an opportunity for questions at the end, so please save your questions throughout the discussion. Ron, we're going to start with you. I want to start tonight's discussion by looking at some data, some research on what we know about what Israelis, Jewish and Arab Israelis, think about the conflict, about the future, about how the conflict can be resolved. You've done some research looking at how things have shifted since October 2023, certainly in terms of how Jews and Arabs see each other, but also how Israelis look to the future. What's changed in the research? What have you seen? What is the big change in the society since 23 in terms of attitudes?
Thanks, Alona. And thanks, NIF, for inviting us. Mariam and me are very happy to be here. And addressing your question, I'll try to share a perspective about public opinion in Israel, mainly the public opinion of the Jewish population in Israel, related to the conflict, which is based on scores of research that we in ACORD conducted since October 7th, and also on scientific knowledge in social psychology, which is our expertise. And I want to begin by saying that Israeli public opinion related to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict is more complicated than what people tend to think. And people tend to think that simply that all Israelis are against political settlement and peace. the picture is more complicated. And of course, there are also big warning signs, which I will share in a minute. But there are also opportunities that we miss, and we should not miss if we want to lead Israel towards a diplomatic agreement to end the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. So there are, on the one hand, or I'll begin by describing the negative side of the picture. And the negative side is that there are extremely negative perception among the Jewish Israelis related to the conflict in the Palestinian. Following October 7th massacre and the war, the Jewish public got like the ultimate validation of the long-standing distrust towards the Palestinian. There is an intensification of the self-victimhood narrative. There is reinforced of a zero-sum perception of the conflict, and there is a deepened belief that it's simply impossible to solve the conflict. Like the majority of Jewish Israelis think that it is impossible, or tend to think that it is impossible to solve the conflict. And above all, there are very high negative emotion and perception towards the Palestinian. And I'm going to share with you some data which is really very negative and non-optimistic, but it is important for me to share with you the picture as is. And in the top of those negative perception is a dehumanization towards the Palestinian. I want to share with you one number. 66% of the Jewish public in Israel think to an high extent that there is no innocent people in Gaza. Like a majority of the Jewish Israelis. And among the opposition voters, we speak about 45% that think that there are no innocent people in Gaza. Indeed, it is a very, very, very bad result. Now, the combination of all those self-victimhood and negative perception towards the Palestinian dehumanization create a very negative and dangerous state of mind. At the same time, there is also another part of the picture. What is most important for the Jewish Israelis now, number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, is security. Following October 7th, following the fact that the strongest army in the Middle East couldn't ensure their basic security in October 7th, and the war that continued for more than 2 years, people are looking for security. And we see in our research that people understand that the policy of the right wing and the policy of management the conflict, which was like the ruling conflict in Israel related to the conflict, that we can manage it. We cannot solve it, so we will manage it, and it will be okay. And this concept collapsed in October 7th, and that creates a vacuum among people. People are looking for another solution. And that's led to a pragmatic point of view that support the regional security diplomatic agreement to end the conflict. This regional diplomatic security agreement, it changed the suggested solution from another try to reach an agreement with the Palestinian, which the Israeli public is against it, to something that is totally new, something that is in a direction of changing the Middle East, and it changes to something which is not like we are coming to address the Palestinian need, because unfortunately, Jewish Israelis cannot care less about the rights of the Palestinian, but it's something that is based on regional strengths, the combined regional strengths of Israel and the United States and the Saudi Arabia and the moderate Arab countries. And that strengthens the concept that it can succeed, and that strengthens the support in this direction. And the second number I want to share with you is that when we ask Jewish Israelis if Israel should agree to a United States-led regional political security agreement that includes the establishment of a Palestinian state in exchange for Arab state recognition and normalization, 50% of the Israeli public support it. We begin to see those numbers from early 2024. And it's 50% from the Israeli public, more than 40% of the Jewish public, and among the voting of the opposition, we speak about 75%. And since, according to all polls, and of course we really hope that there will be next government after the election, so the expected voters of the next government, if it will be a liberal democratic camp, among them 75% support this regional diplomatic security agreement. Again, if I would ask them, do you support the establishment of a Palestinian state? They will say No. But when we ask them if they support this regional deal, they say yes because they look for the security. And it means that we see a very negative perception of the Palestinian, and at the same time we see a more pragmatic point of view that look for a way to resolve the conflict. I'll take 2 more minutes to tell you what we see as what is the potential that is embedded in the current public opinion of the Jewish Israelis. And we think that the current mindset has a potential to 2 very extreme directions. One direction is support an extreme continuation of violence against the Palestinian. And I'm going to say a sentence which is hard, but I have no easy way to say it. The current mindset of Jewish Israelis can support the total destruction of the Palestinian cities in the West Bank exactly as it supported the total destruction of the Palestinian cities in Gaza. It's the same public, it's the same mindset, and the high level of emotion that if some event happen, let's say an extremely successful terror attack of Palestinian, I don't know, against El Al plan or something like that, okay? Then what, if the government is going to crush the Palestinian cities in the West Bank, it will get support as it got support for crushing the Palestinian cities in Gaza. We have to remember another thing, and I'm going to share another bad news, that genocidal discourse became normalized in Israel by the Likud, the ruling party. I want to mention 2 statements. The Deputy Speaker of the Knesset, member of Knesset, Nissim Vaturi, he called in an interview to kill all the men in Gaza. Netanyahu said nothing. Last week, lawyer Kinneret Barashi, she is like in the Likud circles. Last year, she called explicitly to kill all the people in Gaza, from the delivery room to the last old person in Gaza. And last week, she was appointed by the Likud to serve in the Committee of the Regulation of the Media in Israel. So it's very hard to think about it, but genocidal discourse became normalized by the ruling party in Israel. And in a situation when such discourse exists and there is such high level of negative perception, this creates, of course, a very dangerous situation. But I will end with the other side of the picture. The same mindset of the same people is also a potential to support this regional security deal. The fact that people have a very negative perception doesn't mean that they don't support pragmatic solution. And this support that I mentioned earlier, is before the leaders of the liberal democratic camp are raising the flag of this desire and effort to reach this regional diplomatic security agreement to end the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. And of course, I mean, we think that this is one of the biggest mistakes in general, and for sure related to the coming election. And I will end by saying that if the leaders of the liberal democratic camp will raise this flag and will put it strongly on their agenda, not because they care about the Palestinian, I mean, I know that all of us here care, but because this is the way to ensure the security of Israel, the Jewish Israeli public and their voters will go after them. And this is, as we see according to the data, the only way forward to take us out of this endless cycle of wars.
Thank you, Ron. We're going to move on to our next section, but I want to just quickly ask you, it's a big if, what you said there at the end. In countless election cycles that Israel's been through, the conflict is not in any way the center of anyone's campaign. It's not on any manifestos. No one is campaigning on solving the conflict. We're going to talk more about the election later, but do you have a sense from the polling, from the research you've just talked about, that actually there is really an appetite that voters do want to hear from Israeli politicians about that?
Yes, for sure. It looks very weird, but you're very correct. In previous election cycle, the conflict was not there. We did a research in August 2023, and we asked Jewish Israelis what are the 5 most important things that they want the government to take care of. The Israel-Palestinian conflict wasn't at all as something that people think that it is important. And after 2 months, we got October 7th. The discourse now in Israel is mainly for for some perspective on one thing, on who is going to ensure security. And Netanyahu, I will end by saying, Netanyahu is going to come to this election and he will say, I want Iran, and I want Hezbollah, and I want the Houthis, and I want a long list. And if the liberal democratic camp will not have an answer, okay, we might lose the election.
Thank you. We'll go back to elections soon. Now we're going to move on to our second section with Mariam. Hello. Mariam, you work in Accord with Ron, and you do a lot of work around shared spaces between Jews and Arabs within Israel. Tell us a little bit about what you do and how and why those shared spaces are so important.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for having me here tonight. Over the past 2 years, the Israeli society has been living in deep trauma. On one hand, we have a Jewish society that is wounded and afraid. They feel very insecure and tense when they hear Arabic in public. Workplaces are cautious. They hesitate if they're going to hire Arab people. Jewish people don't enter Arab localities. They are afraid, so they change the road. And on the other hand, we have an Arab society that is torn between what's happening in Gaza and what happens in Israel, and feels that they are silenced. And the addition of the past 2 years is that they are living in survival mode. Since there is a rise in violence in the Arab society. Just from the beginning of the year, 50 people, Arab people, were killed by Arab gangs, and they have deep sense of being abandonment. So. This is, and in this reality, the empathy shrinks and the ability to hold complexity disappears. So we see that government is doing nothing to heal that trauma, and at some point, the feeling that it contributes to the division between both societies. This is one reality, and we have another reality. We have the daily life when Jews and Arabs meet all the time at workplaces, in universities, in hospitals. So this is what happens in real life. So between the gap of raising polarization and the daily life, Accord works. So we focus on these shared spaces like workplaces, academic institutions, health system, and work with local authorities and clusters, focusing on mixed cities. It's very important because we want to reduce tension, we want to prevent escalation, and hopefully we can make these shared spaces more inclusive and more, we want them to function all the time. So we work with employers and managements and professors with all our stakeholders. We give trainings based on social psychology and tools. We train them how to handle the tension, how they can be aware of the unconscious bias that they can be among their institutions. We give them lots of tools. We accompany them in tailor-made plans that they can implement through their organizations. It is one of the main focus that it's very important for us, because this is the future, this is the reality when everybody work together, and we want this encounter to be very positive, because positive encounters encourage people to be curious and feel good about the other group. And while negative encounters can, give you, you can tell that yourself that I'm right about all the bad things that I'm thinking about the other group. So this is our main focus. We invest much work, our work in in these areas are rising a lot, and we want to do more. Sometimes the means that we have are not enough to handle all these work in these shared spaces, and I think this is the future. We want the engagement to be something that keep them curious and want to continue.
And what kind of appetite is there among sort of the ordinary people you work with? What appetite is there for that kind of work and for dealing with those unconscious biases? Or are you finding a lot of resistance to people working with you?
Sorry, can you say it again? Actually, we have a lot of clients. After the war, people couldn't manage the tension, and they didn't have the right tools. They didn't know what to say. They either freeze, do nothing, and hope that everything will be solved by itself, or do the wrong things in order to handle this tension. And we had a huge amount of a demand for Accord, for the tools of Accord. We were the only organization that was ready to give an immediate answer for these tension that arises. Workplaces stop working, and on May 21, there was escalation between Arabs and Jews, and there was afraid that escalation will be we will see it again. So people approach Accord in huge amount of asking for help, and we, as I said, we were lucky to be ready to answer. As I told you, the demand, there's a lot of demand, because workplaces cannot work. There is a demand for workforce, and Arab people is the address for that. But when employers are not ready to be diverse, they don't know how to handle the diversity and inclusion within and manage the relationship between the groups. It's something that is a challenging thing. So I think. And we work with with organizations that want our help. We don't offer our help to to be partner with organizations that doesn't want to be partners. So I think there is a rising amount of demand for our tools.
Thank you so much, Mariam. Michal, I want to talk to you a little bit about the work that you're doing with Small Emunim, in order to sort of foster that kind of better shared society. So what are you doing from a kind of religious Jewish perspective?
Okay. First, hi, and again, as Ron and Mariam said, thanks for hosting this, and Chodesh Tov, because we're celebrating Adar now, and Ramadan Kareem for those who are also starting their fast. Well, just first to connect to what was said up until now, it's always weird talking after people who give statistics, as I'm just going to give my opinion, which is grounded in just my opinion and God's word. The Arab question, which is sort of like coming again and again in this conversation, is also a Jewish question, in the sense that it's the question of how Jews perceive the question of Palestinians in Israel, Palestinians in the West Bank, and Palestinians in Gaza. And that question relates to a lot of things which were discussed up until now, such as fear and anxiety and pragmatism and security and all sorts of words of that nature, and also friendly relationships between people who occupy the same workforces and so on. But it also has to do, of course, with identity and with communal identity and the story that we tell ourselves as communities and as Jews. How do we process the story of Jews and Palestinians living in the same place? And while I don't know statistics as well as the people who spoke before me from Accord, we do know one thing which is very, very clear and repeats itself in the data since the 7th of October, that the Israeli society has become much more traditional. And to anybody who's visited Israel in the last 3 years, it's very easy to see in the public sphere that there's much more religion there. It has to do, of course, with the fact that the government and a lot of the sort of the new hegemonic positions are more traditional or more religious, but it also has to do with all these things that we discussed up till now, fear, anxiety, the notion that the state failed, the notion that we can't trust what we're used to trusting. So the return to, or the movement towards faith is something that you see from right all the way to left. And that's something that I want to discuss maybe a bit. I'll just say, from my perspective as an activist, that I've been involved. I've been very fortunate to be involved as an anti-occupation activist in the last 20 years, and I've been very lucky. And part of the reason I've been very lucky is due to the NIF, which allows me to do this work. And I've always sort of compartmentalized my religious perspective as something that sort of I do at home. And while for me it was very clear that my activism is based on my understanding of my faith, it's not something which is discussed. After this last government started, it was clear to a lot of activists, such as myself, and there are, for those of you who know sort of the left in Israel, there are, when you start sort of digging around, you notice that there are quite a bit of religious people who are in different organizations, and we got together, all of us, and we said we really should be thinking about this communally. And it's really the first time in these last 3 years would have been thinking about my kids and not sort of the other, not my community, not Jewish community, but rather Palestinians. And we started a conference, and 700 people showed up, and we realized there's quite a bit of thirst for it. And now, around 3 years later, Smol Emuni, which is not an NGO, in true Orthodox fashion, of course, we already have a couple of NGOs who do different work. We have an educational organization which is starting a gap year program next year, Shnat Sherut, which works with over 100 teachers. We have a book publishing house. We published 4 books last year, and we're starting a Jewish journal with the Van Leer Institute. Next month, we have a political training program called the Midrasha Emunit, which has already trained over 100 activists in the last year. And we also have a group that does protective presence, meaning they work in solidarity with Palestinians who are getting attacked by settlers in the West Bank, which has been very, very violent in the last year, called Bnei Avraham. It's one of the larger, today one of the larger protective presence groups working in the West Bank are people from religious backgrounds. I say all this first just to say what I do, but also because what we've seen and what we've realized is that the Jewish story regarding why we're here in Israel, and how do we deal with the Palestinians is, even if in a roundabout way, but is very clearly related to the question of Palestinians in the West Bank, Palestinians in Israel regarding voting, the fact that we say things like, even in the so-called liberal camp, we'll say, we want to win, but we actually want to make changes, so we don't want the Palestinians, Palestinian parties in our government, because then it can be a sort of a government that makes real decisions. So the way we treat Palestinians and others as others relates to the question of how we view our story as Jews. I say this because that means that it's not only a question of the Orthodox or of the religious right. It's actually a question which is also primarily of the liberal camp. And does the liberal camp create this context where it says, I'm democratic and also Jewish, which is the framework of the liberals, which means that I don't really think about the Jewish. I allow other people to do that and to articulate the vision for me, and I focus on the democratic? Or do we ask ourselves, when we say Jewish, what are we referring to and what tradition are we referring to? And I come at this from an Orthodox perspective, but I imagine there are other perspectives. And in order just to end that, I'll say, they did like a ton of work today, and I went to the Tate. That's been sort of, that's why, they're serious and I'm less. But as I was walking, I got there a bit early, And my wife sent me a short article by Avot Yeshurun from the late 60s. Avot Yeshurun is I think one of the most important poets that Israel created. This is not a poem, and I'll only read one paragraph, but I think it's related. You should totally read Avot Yeshurun. He's incredible. He'll make you cry. He's writing this right after 67. It's a very rough page and a half, and anybody who wants, they can send it to them afterward. But he starts it off by saying, I'll read it in Hebrew, because I'll feel terrible if I don't, and then I'll translate it, and then I'll end talking. He says, אין כאן שאלה של אידיאולוגיה. השמש יצא על הארץ, ובורא העולם הלך אל אברהם, ונתן לאברהם את יצחק ואת ישמעאל. אני מאמין שהכרח מן האמת, כי על העם לחיות משולב בשלום עם הערבים. אני מאמין כי תודעה הזאת מוטלת על דעתו ונפשו, כחלום טרם יקיצה, אשר במשך היום מתבהר הוא לא. He said this isn't really an idea of an ideology, this notion of our war. One day, he says, the sun rose on the land of Israel, and God went to Abraham, and he gave Abraham Isaac and Ishmael. And he believes, says Avot Yeshurun, that it's echrach, it has to be that the Jews and Arabs need to live in peace in the same land. And he believes that this consciousness is already ingrained in the Jewish people, but it's a type of dream, and we'll ultimately end up waking up into that reality. Now, that's a very optimistic statement, but what I think the optimism, it stems from an understanding that our relationship with the Palestinians and two states and pragmatism is actually not a compromise. It's actually an ideal. The notion is not that we're sort of more pragmatic, so we're willing to give up some stuff which is ours. As opposed to the right, who are less pragmatic. The notion is that our goal is actually to share the land between two people. And I think that notion ultimately ends in an interpretation of identity and theology. So I think that's, for me, where the connection is to everything that was said up until now.
That was beautiful. Thank you for reading that. I want to ask you a quick question before we move on to elections. You said, you know, you're coming at this as a Orthodox religious Jew. You said, but it's not. It's also for the liberal Jews. It's not just about. But there's a story here in Israeli society of an extreme religious ideology that has sort of got into government and is poised to annex the West Bank, do all sorts of other things, and has done other things. Do you feel like you're also in a sort of fight for Judaism, not just about what it means to be a Jew, but kind of but Judaism itself within Israel in the face of this ideology?
I think we're always at a fight for Judaism. I'm not, obviously, if there's nobody less naive than an Orthodox left-wing person. So I'm not naive in the fact that I represent a minority opinion. But I do want to challenge just the reisha of what you said, the first part of what you said. Religious Zionism didn't creep in the middle of the night and take over power. We need to be honest and critical enough to ask how they were able to get so much access. And I think they were able to get so much access because they provide for all of mainstream Zionism a coherent story which mainstream Zionism is interested in. And if we don't realize that Ben Gvir is the product of my Beit Midrash, but also the product of Ben Gurion Zionism, then we're not going to be critical enough in order to give a response. And I think that's not the mission of only religious Zionism, but rather the entire country.
Thank you very much. That's a great point to talk about elections. We're in an election year. Is this still on? Yes. Is that better? Is that better? Okay. So we're in an election year, as we've said, and it's an election year coming at a very difficult moment for all the reasons that we've discussed and that everybody in the room knows well. I want to start by asking you all a very general question, if that's all right, and you can answer this in any order that you like. What do you think is at stake here? What happens if what you said, this kind of opposition doesn't win an election. Netanyahu builds another coalition. The people who didn't take over in the middle of the night but are now in power stay in power. What's at stake in these elections?
I'm not going to be optimistic on that. I think, there is no easy way to say. The Kahanists are now in power. They are not only in the government, they are in the cabinet, okay? Ben Gvir, who is a student follower of Harav Kahana, is in the Israeli cabinet. And the government did all efforts to do this judicial overhaul. She was kind of blocked to some extent. It was blocked because of the huge protest that came from the Liberal Democratic camp. And then October 7th happened in their duty, and they didn't take responsibility. And looking forward, usually in Israel before the election, we tend to say that those elections are critical, but those elections are really, really critical. The demographic is a simplifying thing, but is against us. Demographic is not something that cannot be changed because people's mindset is being formative during their life. But the Israeli government is fund Channel 14, which is our Fox News, and they hear conspiracy there like 24/7. It is funded heavily by the Israeli government. So I'm afraid that if we do not succeed to change course and the Kahanists stay in power, first I think that not insignificant part of people from the Liberal Democratic camp will leave. It's difficult to estimate how much, but people are speaking about it. Almost every Jewish Israelis are looking for passport, for European or American passport. And mainly I think that it's Bsorat Mavet, it's a death sign to many people. As I said before, the essence of the ideology of this extreme Kahanist right wing is hate of Arabs. And they have a very clear agenda, which they say explicitly. They want to expel the Arabs from their own land. The political imagination of those people is built on the land of Israel without Arabs. This is part of their political imagination. And after October 7th, they found the opportunity to implement it at least on the Gaza Strip. And they spoke about it explicitly. I'm not giving them interpretation of what has been said by the extreme right wing, but this was their explicit statement. And just last week, or earlier this week, Smotrich said that his desire is to expel Palestinians from the West Bank. And we cannot change the past, and we cannot change what Israel did to the Palestinians in Gaza, but we should avoid that we'll do the same in the West Bank. And this is, unfortunately, a possible scenario if this government is elected. But I do want to say that according to all polls, the chances of the current government to be elected is very low. And if you want, I can elaborate about it later. So the fight is far from being ended. The most chances that there will be at least a more moderate government, and we should all work on this very strongly. And I know that NIF is also put its share on that.
Thank you. Would either of you like to comment on that, or do you feel that Ron has?
Yeah, just a couple of sort of additions. I have no idea what's going to happen. I was told once that it's good to be pessimistic because nobody forgets, nobody remembers if you're wrong. But I do think it's one thing is important for me to add, or maybe two things. A is that elections are not about civil society. Or even about ideas. Elections are about parties and how much power they have. And we have, every camp has this sort of, and definitely civil society, and many times for justified reasons, we know how to explain why the opposition is not strong enough, the opposition is not consistent enough, the opposition doesn't focus on the right things, and I have my share of frustration and critique with any party that I can talk about. But I think now is a time to raise the voice of the parties. in the legal context which are allowed. This isn't about sort of our organizations. It's about 5 or 8 different parties that need to come to the election with as many mandates as possible. So all these sort of also like things that we do in our head where we say, and you see this a lot in media in Israel, and I imagine that replicates it here, maybe the Arabs should vote less, maybe they should vote more, maybe they should, we need to have as many mandates as possible, which are contradictory to Netanyahu. What that means in the next couple of months is that everyone here finds the political home which they're least frustrated with and does everything in their power to make that political home as strong as possible and not focus on other political homes and why they're problematic. And that's something that's very, very difficult to do, but I think it's possible. And I think we were talking about this before, that we said when parties, my trick for doing that is instead of talking about parties, I think of people in parties. And I look at what's happening now in the opposition, and I can think of like 10 people at least who I'm incredibly excited for them being ministers in another government. And the fact that somebody who has, I mean, when I see my opinions and I say, okay, I don't know, how many people in Israel believe them, and then I say, wow, there are 10 people in government who could represent me, is actually quite phenomenal. And I think the opposition has actually done a great job in the last couple of years of bringing incredible people into the opposition. I think that's something to look forward to. And the reason I'm sort of self-motivating myself, even in this talk, is because that's our goal. Our goal now is to have as many mandates as possible. And the other thing that I will say, and I think this is a difference sort of in communities, because I have like one foot in sort of like the liberal left secular camp and one foot in the religious camp. Maybe the primary difference is that one foot everybody's talking about leaving the country, and the other foot nobody's having that conversation. And I think that's also something to recognize, that people will leave, but people will stay. I know quite a bit of them, and people will continue to have that fight. I'm also very hopeful and worried, but I also know that we've lost elections in the past, and we're going to need to get over that and then sort of move ahead.
Mariam, I wanted to ask you, Ron mentioned before, all Israelis are trying to get another passport if they can to leave the country. We were talking before about the fact that Arabs and Israel Palestinian citizens don't have the option of getting another passport. They can't go anywhere. And they're looking at this reality where there's little representation of them. There's zero representation of them in government at the moment. They've got this very racist government that they're trying to move out. They've got this terrible spate of crime in their communities that's been completely neglected by the government. What will bring Palestinian citizens, Arabs in Israel, to vote in these elections in order to, how can they believe what Michael just said, that their vote can actually make a difference, that they can be practical?
Thank you for that. We in our research in Accord, we asked our people who didn't vote who didn't vote, why did they choose not to do that? So we compared two major researches. One that accompanied the 2019 election and about the election in 2022, and we found four main reasons for them not voting. So one was lack of trust in the political system. The other was lack of trust in Arab representatives, Arab parties and politicians, and the belief that my vote will not matter. And the fourth one was ideological a boycott. So here's what changed between the two elections. So in 2019, only 2% say that they didn't vote because they didn't trust the system. In 2022, the number jumped to 31. So a huge, dramatic raise. The lack of trust in Arabic parties and representatives also increased from 21 to 33. Okay, it was like interesting data that the belief that my vote it doesn't matter, decreased. Okay, from 32 to 20. Yes. So. When we ask them what will increase your, what will make you turn out and go to vote, the first thing that they say it's about unifying the Arab parties into one large joint list. The second is bringing a new politician to the leaders, and the third, they want commitment from Arab parties to join the government and governing coalition and influence. And the fourth one was signals from the leaders of the liberal camp that they are seriously going to address the concerns of the Arab leaders, and that they are going to, they are planning to have them within the coalition. I just want to say that if Ron earlier said that it is a crucial coalition election, I want to add another crucial for that, because I think for the Arabs, it's, if the past we fought for equal rights and equal opportunities, now we are fighting for our security. You know, I'm originally from Nazareth and I live in Haifa. When I visit my parents in Nazareth, my father asked me not to go to any grocery in Nazareth or any bakery, because it's a Russian roulette. You never know where you can stand and when you're going to be shot. So it's extremely dangerous to, you know, this is the sense that they are living in the Arab localities. They were abandoned behind, police accusing them that they are the reason for the situation. Nobody protects them. And I want to add another thing. There's a sense that this government can do anything. Nothing will protect.
Will prevent them.
Yes,
will prevent
nothing
them.
can prevent her from deciding to transfer Arab-Israeli. The sense that nobody can do anything about that, and we don't have another passports. We can't get another passport. So it is very crucial for the Arabs, and I hope, you know, I think that the point that they are not voting, it's not about apathy. It's about trust. Whenever you tell the Arabs that you are gonna be influenced, you're gonna have the right to be partners and to gain your basic rights to live in secure. You're not asking really for much more. I think that there'll be partners, and we have to work together in order to bring them on board.
Thank you so much, Miriam. We're going to go to questions from the floor in just a minute. I just want to ask one final question before we do, so save up your questions. We were talking just now about the vote of Palestinian citizens for Arab parties, and you alluded to the fact before that if you look at the polling, there is a path for the opposition bloc to form the government. However many years ago, when Naftali Bennett and Yair Lapid formed a government, they did so with the support of Ra'am, of an Arab majority party. And now it looks like the Arab party are again going to join on a slate to increase the votes, make sure they get more votes as a bloc. Do you see that coalition being formed? Can you see a reality where Naftali Bennett, Prime Minister, forms a coalition with a joint slate of the Arab majority parties?
So indeed, as I told you before, the chances of Netanyahu to form a government like the one is very small. But at the same time, the chances of the opposition to form a government or to reach 61 seats without the Arabs is very low. The big chances, and we see it in all polls, is the opposition, include the Arabs, will have more than 60 seats. And then there will come Naftali Bennett, second time in history, he will have to decide. Now, if I said history, we have to look, let's look a little bit, 1 minute history. The Arabs, for the first time in the Israeli history, were part of the base support of the government during the second Rabin government. The head of the opposition in that time was Netanyahu. When I tell it to young people, they think that I'm like misleading them. But Netanyahu was the head of the opposition between 92 and 95. And this saw the Israeli government, based on the political power, and based also on the political power of the Arab citizens, doing maybe the most dramatic act in the history of Israel. Recognize the Palestinian peoplehood, bringing the Palestinian leadership from Tunis back to Israel. And since then, one of the main political campaigns of Netanyahu is the legitimation for the political power of the Arab citizens. It's something very strong and consistent, okay, in Netanyahu ideology, and you know what, not ideology, in Netanyahu politics. And when he came back to office in 2009, he kept on doing it. And his main political project was to avoid the situation that Arabs will be part of the coalition. And this political project failed on June 2021. And when it failed, the Netanyahu regime also failed. And we are again in the same situation. In order for the Liberal Democratic camp to be in power, to replace Netanyahu, they have to join forces with the Arabs. Now, it becomes now much more complicated compared to 2021, even though we have to remember that in May 2021, for the first time since 1949, there were violent clashes between Jews and Arabs in the street. I was interviewed in the media in May, and I'm considered very optimistic. And I was asked if I think that there will be a government based on the Arabs after the election. I said, unfortunately, when there is such violence in the street, I think it will not happen. After 3 weeks, for the first time in the Israeli history, an Arab party became part of the coalition. When we look now at what we see from the research, the support among the Liberal Democratic camp for Arab party being part of the coalition decreased significantly following October 7th. I mean, you can't believe how strong is the campaign now in Israel, and the campaign is mainly on Mansour Abbas, because Mansour Abbas is the most moderate leader of the Arab citizen. That's why the government keeps on saying that he is supporting that he supports terror. It's on a daily basis on a billboards in Israel. It's like crazy. Now, but we do see from our research that despite the fact that the right wing of the Liberal Democratic camp, that Bennett represent them. Unfortunately, his voters come also from the left, but Bennett for sure is the leader of the right wing of the Liberal Democratic camp, if I would say. They prefer a government without the Arabs. But when they are giving the choice if to go to another election or government with Netanyahu or to do partnership with the Arabs, they prefer partnership with the Arabs. So, in the current political situation, there is a feasible to again reconstruct a government that will include an Arab party, and I think that this is the only way to change the regime in Israel.
Thank you, Ron, very much. Now over to everybody in the audience. Who has a question? Do you need a microphone? Can you speak loudly? No? Okay, please tell us who you are and keep your question brief. We do need a microphone. Hold on. I think you can throw them. No? Yeah, you can chuck it at the... Okay.
Wow. Okay.
Please tell us who you are, where you're from, and ask your question.
I'm originally from Israel. I live here. My name is Eli Arush. Firstly, it's depressing that you already nominated Bennett as Prime Minister. Now, you talk about, and you also call all these supposedly opposition as if they are the liberal side. They are not. That's misrepresentation of who they are. So my question to you, is there because you have 70, there's no coalition, there's no government without the Arabs, that's clear. Of the 7, 2 of them don't pass the 3% threshold. of the 7, only one party already said that they are willing to form a government. You say that their people, even in the right wing, would be okay with it, and yet you see no leadership on the side. So my question to you, what is the chance that within the 50 that are the Jewish parties, it leans more towards the Democratic, say the Democratic Party and somewhat Yesh Atid, rather than Lieberman and Bennett?
Okay, we'll collect another 2 questions, if that's okay. So remember the question. Think about your answer. Who else has a question? There, gentleman over here.
Hi, Sheldon Stone from London. It's a question to Mariam, actually. Could you give us a concrete example of where your tools have actually helped in a shared society? And I just want to add that the research coming out of Givat Chaviva shows that trust and willingness to cooperate and collaborate with Jewish society has risen amongst Arab Israelis during this war, whereas the reverse has happened with the Jews. I don't know if your research confirms that, but I'm really interested in the concretization of your tools. If you could give us an example, that would be really helpful.
Thank you for that excellent question. One more question. Anybody got a question? Gentleman over here in the front.
Hello. Can you hear me if I just go like? Yes.
They need you for their videos.
Oh, I see. I've forgotten what I wanted to ask, actually. No.
Could you tell everyone your name and where you're from as well, just for anyone who might not know who you are?
Michael Sorkin. It's really just carrying on from the previous question. When you look at the research that Ron provides us with, which might look as if the Jewish population are 50-50, pro and when you come to an election, despite maybe 50-50, you go on to say, however, the good guys, if that's right, cannot win without the Arab vote. So what is the problem with the 50-50? Because if they need an Arab vote as well, there's a problem at the good guys 50-50 is worth less than the other guys 50.
Thank you very much for the question. Okay, should we start with the first one? Who wants to go first?
First, I'm very happy with the framing of your frustrations. So I want to share the framing of your frustrations. And it's something worth mentioning. We've had this conversation the last couple of days. Obviously, Bennett is not a liberal. He used to run the Yesha Council. He is, in my view, pretty hyper right-wing. It's very frustrating that he's been already positioned to be sort of prime minister, and it's not exactly clear that will happen because we don't know who his party is yet. We don't know who Eisenkot's party is yet. We even don't know who the Democratic Party is yet. There's so many things that we don't know yet, and I think we need to be very vigilant to not sort of create this prophecy which exists in the end, which I think Bennett is banking on. Of course, there is a chance, like a statistical chance, even a strong chance, that Bennett will end up forming this project. But I definitely agree that, and I think Ron also mentioned that earlier, that nobody here is happy or frustrated or voting for Bennett. But I think that point also should be made very clear. And I think Ron also alluded to this earlier, and I did as well, where we don't know how actors will behave after the elections end. To just connect it to the third point, The fear is that there'll be another election because the parties would rather go to another election than to form, which has happened in the past. So it's not that it'll be 50-50 and everything will be okay because it'll be weaker. But you just go through another election cycle, and Bibi so far is going to be and prime minister, and we go into this thing, and it can go for a year, but at least. But I think we don't know. I heard Samer Swed say this last week, and I'm mentioning his name purposely here because there are incredible actors doing Get Out the Vote campaigns, and Kedaya is definitely, I think, one of the major ones. But he said, our role as people who, he said this on a personal level, of course, our role as people who are interested in the joint list is to have as many people vote for the joint list, and then your role is to decide what to do with that problem. And my role is to have, he said, my role is to have 17 seats and not 15, and then have Bennett or Eisenkot or Golan decide what to do with the fact that there are 17 seats. It'll make his choice harder if there are more seats for the joint list. So therefore, if one here supports the joint list, the role is to have as many votes for the joint list. And since I said something positive about the joint list, it is also worth mentioning that all of the leadership of the Demokratim have been more upfront about the willingness to work with the joint list for the last year, definitely than in the history of Labor, and I would also suggest Meretz. That they've been more open to not only Ram, and I wouldn't use the word pragmatic to describe Ram. They're definitely more easily workable. But that's important. It's important that Yair Golan says very openly that he sees no equivalency between people like Ayman Odeh and people like Ben Gvir. That of course he'd be able to work with Hadash. And Naama Lazimi obviously had said that as well, Gilad Kariv, and I think that's important. It's a mainstream Jewish voice, and if we're so afraid of Ben Gvir with 8 mandates, then we should be excited about the Demokratim with 10 mandates. There's no reason to think where the left doesn't exist, where we view the radical right as this huge thing, even though they're smaller than the left.
Thank you for your question. I just want to say that our research shows that there was a huge drop after the October 7th between the relationship between Arab Jews and the willing to be together in shared spaces. But we see that there is a rise in both Arab and Jewish, but it didn't. Regarding the Jewish society, it didn't return to the situation pre-war. We in Accord use tools from social psychology, which shows us that emotions such that like fear, hope, anger, and empathy shape our relationships and the way that we behave. So we usually use tools from social psychology in order to explain why people in trauma feels the way they feel and why they want to ensurement from the other group that they are with them and not against them, and they tend to see everybody as homogeneous group. So when we explain these things, people became more aware of the complexity. So, for example, we in workplaces we help them to handle tension. The basic thing, how to speak within the organization. So we have a model called Ramzor, a traffic light. The traffic light model. So which statement can be green, which is possible to be, and it's something that good to have it in the discourse within the workplaces. And what is yellow, you can say it, but please think about your friends and colleagues in the workplaces. And the red, you should not say that. Okay, so when you give tools such like this to workplaces, and we give lots of trainings about unconscious bias. So when you are aware of your unconscious bias, so you are more open to dialogue and discourse and to include, feel more tolerant about the other people, and we give them clear protocols how to manage, how to handle on the organization on daily basis and in times of tension. So these are the basic things that we do. Every of our interventions are based on science. So it's not intuition intervention. It is based on science, and we do lots of researches to give us the whole picture, and then we develop our tools, which are innovative, practical, and as I said, research-based, science-based. Thank you.
I'll add something about the election following your question, Ellie and Michael. So indeed, I heard, as Michael, I heard the frustration, and I share the frustration. We have very bad cards in Israel now to save Israel. And I cannot agree more that Bennett is not liberal democratic. But we do see that since February, March 2023, when the struggle against the judicial overhaul began, there began in Israel concept that people define themselves as liberal democratic. Israel was Yemin v'Smol. That was Israel, Yemani or Smolani. And since February, March, April 2023, and before the war, during the struggle, people defined themselves as liberal democratic. Now, we can bring professor for sociology, and he will say if they are liberal democratic or not. But the good news, the fact that so many Israelis define themselves as liberal democratic, which means they want to protect democracy, they want to protect the High Court, and they are against Netanyahu. It's very clear. You know, it became leftist to go with the Israeli flag in the street. It's like crazy, okay? But it's really become sign of leftists to go with the flag to the demonstration. Now, the group of people that define themselves as liberal democratic include the moderate right, which are people that hold a right-wing position, and they left Netanyahu and the Likud, and they are going to vote to Bennett. And we need those voters in order to have a different government. The bad news is that there are many people that hold left and center position and are going to vote to Bennett. That's, okay, I don't want to, it's a formal event, but that's very bad. Because
you can swear here, it's fine.
No, I don't want to swear. No, it is bad because the result will be, one of the worst scenario of the election is Netanyahu is government like the current. But there is another bad scenario, and this is Netanyahu. I'm sorry, this is a government of Bennett and Netanyahu. And it means that people that have left and center position in Israel might vote for Bennett and get their voice in the next government will be a right coalition, includes Carnists, because some of the Likud are Carnists themselves. Bennett will not go with Ben-Gvir, but he might go with the Likud, and the Likud has a Carnist factors inside the Likud, and that's insane. And I will share another bad news that there is so much a real liberal democratic philanthropy that pours millions and millions of shekels to Bennett. And that will cause more and more voters for the left and center to vote for Bennett. I do want to say, the New Israel Fund is very far from this strategy, thanks God. The New Israel Fund is a very good investment and is not in this direction. Unfortunately, there are many real liberal philanthropists in Tel Aviv, in London, and for sure in the United States that support Bennett. And I think that effort should be made, and efforts are being made now on the ground in Israel to tell people very simply, if you hold a left or center worldview, vote for candidate that will represent it. I will just end by saying that despite all the complexities, the chances for the bloc from Bennett to Golan to agree to form a government with at least this pragmatic Arab party, as we see from the data and as we learn from the lesson of 2021, there is a more than a reasonable chance that it will happen. And I think that we should all work on the legitimation of the Arab party to be part of the coalition, because this is the way to form another government.
Thank you, Ron. That's an excellent point to end this evening on. Really, really important. Hopefully you can all take it away into the wider Jewish community and make sure that everybody understands what's happening in Israel at the moment. Thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you all for coming out on a freezing night.
Thank you very much. I would like to thank you again for coming in this cold weather, and to thank our speakers for agreeing to come and share their thoughts with us. Thank you very much for thoughtful conversation. You left us with a lot of things to think about, such as how to plan, fly home, and go. Thank you very much, Fiona. Yes, all of us. Thank you very much. Please enjoy the refreshments. Have a great night. מה זה? רגע. לא שמעתי אותך, אורי. רגע, לא